Hello and welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie, and today I'm delighted to be joined by 6 excellent customer experience analysts to run through all the latest news from the space. Yesterday, I'm delighted to be joined by Zeus Caravala, Principal Analyst at CX Research, Liz Miller, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, Rebecca Wetterman, CEO and Principal Analyst at Balir, Michael Fawcett, Founder, CEO and Chief Analyst at Aran Research, Simon Harrison, Founder and CEO of Actionary, and Martin Schneider, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research. It's great to have you all join me, and let's get right into the news. And let's start with the news. The Salesforce contact center with Amazon Connect is coming. And this news was teased by an AWS exec on LinkedIn after Dreamforce 2024. And according to the exec, this offering will natively integrate the digital channels as well as voice from Amazon Connect and put it into Salesforce Service Cloud. And I think we can expect to hear more about this at December's AWS reInvent event. But as always, it's great to hear kind of all of your perspectives on this news. So yeah, I don't know, Rebecca, maybe if I can start with you.
Sure. I mean, this is really about bringing all the pieces together, right? For the customer, integrating CRM and contact center is where it's going. And what it means is lower cost and faster time to value, but also greater flexibility over time and fewer moving parts to manage because the vendors have already pre-integrated this stuff. You know, we've seen Salesforce already do it with Genesys. Now doing with Amazon just gives customers more choice and more pre-integrated options.
Yeah, the service, it's about this turnkey difference, isn't it? I mean, most CCaaS vendors have said, "Oh, we've got an adapter for that." We can integrate with any CRM, but this turnkey approach where they've actually considered the working components and said, "Look, we can make these work closer together." To Rebecca's point, makes it easier for buyers. And that's the big deal. Easier.
They've had the integration for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been able to utilize Connect capability in Salesforce for a long time. So this is more polish and packaging, I think, is really the best way to say it, because it's, I can even remember myself to catch up to what Salesforce was doing with Connect, building out integrations with certain CRM products I worked at with Connect in 2018. So this is, they've had that relationship for a while now. So it's very much that turnkey, make it easier to get that going is the most, probably the key takeaway, right? Because it's not, the relationship around Connect is not new.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what's more interesting is what happens next too, right? I think, this is, I guess, addressing the issue that we've all talked about where the term CX is so broad now and it's used by everybody from, sales and marketing to customer service to, even web analytic companies and stuff. And so I think this almost becomes table stakes, right? For any CCaaS or CRM vendor, you got to have that integration. But the question is, where do they go next? And I think that we'll continue to see the integration of all things CX coming down. I'm really curious to see which platform the customer decides they're going to use as their primary one, right? Like it certainly seems like Salesforce has the inside track there, but who knows? Right?
I think more data to feed the AI. Really.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. I think
that's the driver of it, right?
That's the real big piece. Yeah, is that the fact that we're rapidly moving towards automation, and the more automation, the more data you need, and the cleaner and the higher quality that data is. So to me, this just makes sense. The more you integrate, the more you tie that data layer together, the better the automation is going to be.
And with Data Cloud being better and better with unstructured data, it all comes together.
I think integrate is probably a misnomer. And I think it's a little bit of a, it's probably the only word we can use right now, but like we have to remember that a good deal of a lot of Salesforce's data cloud, a lot of Salesforce's tooling are built on AWS, right? So I think that this, everything that we think about when it comes to Connect, I think it's easy to think about it as Connect is this thing that we know, right? It's the CCaaS, so that's why we're all certainly gathered here today to talk about it. But when we talk about the rest of the Salesforce ecosystem, the rest of the AWS ecosystem, the interesting thing for me is what happens when Q starts to actually get laid over on top of all of it. because with this integration and with bringing all of this voice together with Data Cloud, including a vector database, with so many different types of data and so many different points about the customer, now being able to come in, even if you're a Salesforce customer, you can be using AWS, you can be using Amazon Q and be asking very different questions. They have Q for Connect. They have that is a native product that allows for that generative AI tool. So I think that with the solution right now, and Martin had said it kind of in passing just a moment ago, it's really about where the AI starts to intersect into all of this, because all of these connected pieces, regardless of what else gets brought into it, right? Because I don't think anyone's I think it's really now, I think we're in the suites era. We're not in the one platform to rule them all, because I don't think contact center agents are going to feel comfortable being like, oh, so I have to go totally into Salesforce, or, oh, I can't be in kind of the Connect environment that I'm very used to. So I think we're going to have a lot more of that flexibility, because work has become headless, if we really think about it, right? So I think that what the interesting thing about the Connect and the deeper integrations, not just with Salesforce on the service side, but you now have to remember, so it's two announcements together, right? Salesforce, all of its clouds are now on core. So it's all together. So now all of that goodness is coursing through that core platform ecosystem. You can lay Data Cloud on top of that. You can lay Q and Connect on top of that. Suddenly, you don't have to limit your agents in what they can ask. They can really ask anything now. And I think that becomes a really interesting part of the Connect story, as opposed to the Salesforce story, right? I think the Salesforce story is the Salesforce story. But the Connect story becomes a whole lot more interesting, especially when you start to think about Q.
But in theory, you can use Einstein AI and Connect data too, right? Like, I mean,
totally.
That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
It's coming from all.
You're choosing
more is more.
For the best for your organization, right? And I think that even the Q for Connect can be used for very specific things, and you can tailor it, and you can tailor that RAG for very specific things, and then you use Einstein for the more operational. So, but I think the nice thing about all of this is it's not cost prohibitive with that Salesforce Q Connect combination to actually get some real traction from your AI in a way that's meaningful for your business, but isn't going to break the bank. It's not going to, send you to track.
I think the thing about to your point, Zias, when it comes to CX, sales, marketing, customer service is CX, right? It's not just inbound service requests. It's all the touch points, all the modalities. If you're talking about true customer experience, it's the customer's experience with the entirety of the brand and how they connect. And typically, your people information, what makes us customers, is stored in that CRM application. You don't store that in the contact center product. You got that richness of engagements and contact information to use with your AI. But most of the information you need to create those kind of experiences we're all touching on here, comes from the information that's stored within that CRM application ecosystem, ERP ecosystem. So in terms of how this plays out as a theme, I feel like, CCaaS will continue to be an important part of the stack. It has to be, because, CRM vendors, just as CCaaS vendors probably don't necessarily want to become CRM vendors probably don't want to take on that enormity of being voice network providers. I mean, just consider the commercial that impacts. Their margin model completely changes. And what's the value of it? So I think there's always going to be this kind of like synergistic approach to solving these problems. And I think that these vendors just can more and more provide more solutions as a turnkey capability. So it'll be interesting to see who kind of pairs up and how and why.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Simon, because I think everyone's, I hear all the time that people think that, especially equity analysts, that Salesforce will buy their into the CCaaS market and kill off the CCaaS vendors, but they do not want to run that global voice infrastructure. Yeah. For them, partnering is a much better way to do it. And I think, I think that's the model that's going to stay for a while. So.
Yeah.
They're not going to bite off any of those, right? And, and I think that I think now the time is, and we all here talk about it a lot, right? Because I think we all have that same vantage point in that CX is a strategy; it's not a tool. And I think it's the same way. Like everyone kind of drops into this idea that CX is like a mystical, magical technology that's going to solve all their customer experience problems, and it's not if you don't have the strategy. I think the interesting bit now is if you've been thinking of it as a department or a function, you are likely going to get left behind in the next 12 to 16 months, because the technology with the AI is going to move us so quickly that if you don't have that strategy in place, you're just going to fall.
Absolutely, yeah. Like again, lots of really great stuff there, and it is interesting to consider how Salesforce is managing its relationships with CCaaS partners as well. Just on that point, I think there was the launch of Salesforce Foundations recently, and you saw TalkDesk were a part of that, Genesys were a part of that, WebEx were a part of that. So that's really great, and I do want to switch gears a little bit now to talk about our next topic. That is the acquisition of Playvox by NICE. So from the time of recording, there's still no official word on this from NICE. But after the rumors emerged over the summer, Playvox has updated its name on LinkedIn and X to Playvox by NICE, which is quite interesting. It sure seems like there is a deal that's gone through between NICE and
acquisition.
You think?
Maybe they were saving that for Zambia. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Again, it would be great to hear all of your thoughts on the significance of this acquisition. I don't know, Simon, if you maybe want to start on this.
Well, it's an interesting. To me, it's kind of land grab. It signals a further consolidation in the web market, right, where NICE strengthens its position by absorbing a key competitor. Couldn't call them that, probably, but one especially closely aligned to Salesforce. It gives NICE some greater leverage in that CRM web integration space, which is quite important now. When you look at the way that buyers are looking at web, they're increasingly looking for web support from the CCaaS vendor or the CRM vendor as perhaps opposed to a pure play. And then there's that build or buy, right? You don't typically you can't really build WFM. It's the most complicated thing. That algorithm thing is not, you can't just whip that together. It's a very complicated thing to figure out the forecasting algorithms and the intraday and everything else. That's the thing that you're going to probably buy. So it just makes sense for them to be, I think it's a strategic move to be more and more closer to the likes of the Salesforce. You've got a lot of Service Cloud customers that are using Playvox. I mean, it's a good strategic move, I think.
This is really just a continued strategy at NICE. There's no vendor that's done a better job of selling contact center things with contact center. In fact, I think last year was in Machu Picchu, they talked about that whenever they replace a contact center vendor, they sell 5 other products, quality management, all that stuff along with it. And so this just adds to that. And there's been no vendor, I think, that's executed on that strategy of selling adjacencies to contact center better than NICE. And so to me, this seemed like, kind of obvious and almost like, why didn't they do it sooner?
And I think it gives them a boost in a place where it was really required. I think for a long time, NICE has been building up capabilities, whether it is, outbound, whether it's their proactive business, whether, whatever different parts of kind of the engagement ecosystem that they want to be able to deliver. And, WFM is probably going to go through, the biggest shakeup that we've probably seen it go through, thanks to AI and thanks to models being able to put more of that self-service power in the actual hands of the workforce. So you're starting to see that shift, and folks who have kind of had a more traditional WFM approach are really struggling. Whereas we see that AI-empowered WFM and the AI-empowered QM, we're starting to see those solutions really pique a lot of interest, because those are kind of those easy drop-in points where AI can drop in and make a really big impact fairly quickly without disrupting too much of the apple cart. So we're starting to see also QM, WFM start to get around some of the security and compliance checks that are holding back some of the other areas of AI that kind of are giving security a little bit of a problem. So I think the acquisition was a really smart one. I think it actually bolstered and kind of brings forward that AI forward, leaning into that comprehensive solution. So I think it's a good pickup, but, it'd be nice if it was a formal pickup. Everyone
well, it's formal in some places. You just have to look in the right spot.
Well, they might announce it this week. They might be saving it for this week. They might be saving
maybe.
it for the event
I'll
this
let
week.
you guys
That would
know.
make sense. Exactly.
Somebody should have let the Playvox folks know, though.
Yeah.
They're excited. Come on.
If you look across sort of the contact center as a whole, the whole sort of WFM QM space is one of those areas that has some of the greatest potential with AI, right? Because I've just never been able to really do this stuff in real time at scale before. So I think we're going to see more vendors either pick off these smaller players or really invest in innovating there. Because if you think about where's an area where I can throw AI at a bunch of data that I already have and move the needle really quickly, both in terms of efficiency and quality, it's WFM and scheduling. And it's
for sure.
Yeah. Well, and it gives a nice, it's a smart play by them to give them some opportunity to sell other stuff into a new customer base. I mean, it's just another expansion opportunity for them too. So,
although I gotta wonder a little bit, like, when does NICE become the Infor of the contact center? Right? Where they've just got
that is a good question.
Girl, you just went there.
Awesome.
Good question.
Well, I think I'm the only one on the call that doesn't understand that reference.
Yeah. I always got to go to Google now, but
yeah.
Lots of good stuff there. I think it is interesting. I guess NICE is already considered in many ways the kind of gold standard in the contact center already of WEM. So maybe this is a way to sort of solidify that, maybe lower its competition perhaps in the field as well. And it's interesting that all the moves in the WEM space at the moment, you had Zendesk spinning out a solution, Alvaria coming back and spinning out a solution too. So yeah, lots of good stuff there. But I do want to take us on to the next sort of round of discussion, I guess. And for something different this month, I thought I'd ask you each for your favorite story from across October so far, just in 1 minute or so. Tell us what it is and sort of why it resonated so much with you. So let's give this a go. Michael, I don't know if we could start with you on this.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm going to go in a slightly different direction than CX. I guess I'm going to drop a layer down. I think one of the stories that I thought was really interesting this month is about a startup, an MIT spinoff startup called Liquid, and what they're doing with the foundation models, the language models, and how this is starting to shift. So we have these kind of transformer based models. There are several very large companies that have done well with that, but underneath that, part of the problem is you have to pre-train everything, and it doesn't evolve really. It doesn't train itself beyond the pre-training. So it's kind of a limiter at some point, or if nothing else, it's extremely expensive to do all of that work. Well, in this kind of new paradigm, the model actually becomes something that's continuously learning and adaptive, flexible, scalable, and it moves away from the need to do everything up front, do all the training up front. It actually lets the language model be smart enough to learn as it's used over time. And it's exciting, and they call that, liquid foundation model. But once I started to look at that announcement and dig in a bit more, I looked across all these other large companies that are involved in this, and every one of them has an initiative to do something like this. So I think that gives you a view into into sort of the next generation of what the language model looks like. So rather than having to pre-train everything and then retrain everything, you get to a point where the model continuously evolves and trains itself, which is pretty exciting over time. So that's mine.
Yeah, that's great, and lots of permutations actually for the CX space. So a great start, and I think. And I don't know, maybe Martin, if you want to go next.
Sure. I think for me, what's interesting just announced is the Agentic AI story finally being kind of told by Microsoft. So adding some really interesting, I think they have 10 out of the box agents that they've added across their sales automation tools and dynamics, the CX tools that they have out there. But what's really kind of interesting is their ERP tools. So the agents against ERP being able to actually work on, really doing some cool like employee experience for G&A people to really streamline some of those like really kind of boring, mundane tasks. So again, kind of what we're talking about with the workforce automation, really being able to show some really great gains in hyper productivity for G&A people. So some really cool stuff there. Also seeing SAP kind of do the same thing. So really starting to see the agentic AI against ERP starting to come out. Because in my mind, ERP data, if inaccurate. It's not like CRM data. It's like you don't get fired when your sales automation data is bad, at least not immediately, right?
Goodness.
But with ERP data, someone when it's really bad and not good enough to actually run AI, somebody that gets fired or goes to jail, right? So I mean, it's at that level. So we're starting to see that ERP agentic AI stuff, and that has really good repercussions both for employee experience and customer experience. Really cool stuff. I think that was some pretty big stuff coming out of Microsoft and also SAP over the last week.
Yeah, it's great that Microsoft's finally starting to sell that story, and the SAP announcement actually was really thought provoking. I thought, and how they're kind of sticking with Dual as well, but expanding the concept. But yeah, again, lots of really good stuff there. I don't know, Zeus, maybe if you want to go next.
Yeah, for me it was just the trend of the UC vendors actually establishing themselves as legitimate contact centers now, right? So Zoomtopia was this year. It was just this month. It was heavy contact center flavor. Ring Central was a Diamond sponsor, Enterprise Connect AI. They talked a lot about their contact center, their homegrown one. WebEx One is this week, right? They've built out their CCaaS platform off of the WebEx UC platform, and it's the combination of UC CC, something the industry's talked about for a while, but it's not like the CCaaS vendors were really incented to drive it that way. And so now that, Ring and Zoom and WebEx and stuff are starting to have some momentum, we're starting to see some interesting workflows that are, they start from the UC side and they cross over to CC. And I think it's this has been a long time coming for the industry, but I like the different vendors in the CCaaS space now because they bring a different view to it. They're targeting different users and they bring different use cases, and that expands the TAM for everyone. I think that's good for the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. There was an interesting stat actually that came through on the WebEx media briefing I went to last week, which I can say by the time this goes out, that I think the CCaaS was the highest kind of performing, highest growth SaaS product
SaaS product they had
across the whole portfolio, which was quite striking. So yeah, another really great trend there. I can tell Simon wants to say something too, so I'll quickly pass it to him.
I was just going to say, the whole year, the subject matter expert, bringing them into the contact center call, never really really did much for me. I'm excited about what's going on with as you say, Zeus, the potential of the UCaaS vendors doing more of this AI connecting as well. My story is a little more, it's not necessarily public news. I like to talk to the consultants on the ground quite a lot. And one of them was telling me that that there was sat with an agent recently. We touch base and we just chat through various stories of real world, contact center happenings. And I was sat with an agent recently that handles calls from people with financial problems. And this particular client started to cry when the agent was so helpful, so compassionate, and really did a phenomenal job. And it actually caused the consultant to cry. And then I was listening to this story and I was thinking, I'm going to cry in a minute. I mean, this is just so emotionally powerful. What these guys are doing is incredible. When she asked what to the agent, does this happen a lot? He said, well, about 10 times a week. But the important message here is that, when you start to put bots in between customers and agents, you give them the simpler tasks and you start to offer more and more self-service, it has an impact on the agent, right? The benefit of being able to deal with more complex, high-pressure engagements is the challenge too. It creates significant mental load. I think there's an opportunity to see more of a resurgence in call gamification capabilities, or ways to help break up the agent's day a bit, because those simpler calls and chats were how they got a break. And we're going, no, we're going to give that's low-hanging fruit for the bots. Let's give them to those guys. But it's important to recognise the mental load is going up on these agents as a result of that, and on supervisors, right? They've got that really difficult job of managing lifestyle balance when it comes to a proper holiday. They're the ones with a big queue of agents outside their door saying, "Well, I want that shift." So there's an important dynamic, I think, to this self-serve thing that we should think about. And in real world terms, it was quite a story for me. It actually really resonated.
Yeah, again, really interesting. I think we've also discussed, not really gone into a discussion about it, but it's been mentioned, the theme of how AI will impact agent KPIs before, especially on occupancy rate and metrics like that. I think that could be particularly interesting for the future. Do you want to skip through now to the final couple of stories there? I don't know, Rebecca, if you want to go next.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think broadly the opportunity as we see folks start to reduce these tools, and we look at what Aran has done with Genie, for example, in giving managers the dashboards and the data really in real time to be able to understand how my agent's doing, when they need a break, what my overall quality picture looks like. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff happening there. I would say the announcement that I saw, and I know Charlie wrote about it a little bit, and we talked about it a little bit over the summer, the fact that Genesys has now filed to go back potentially for an IPO next year is very, very interesting in terms of what we've seen with overheated prices in the market and a lot of uncertainty, both from a technology and an AI perspective and an economic and social perspective. I think it's an interesting signal for the market. It'll be interesting to see what that means for sort of 2025 as we look at all of those folks that are now private that potentially have an opportunity to maybe look at a more realistic marketplace opportunity.
With Genesys as well, I think that opportunity for extra scrutiny over sort of their kind of performance will be interesting. That, I mean, they don't have the same scrutiny that NICE or Five9 or a company like that would have. And especially sort of after the announcements, maybe a couple of years ago too, when it's kind of stopped this legacy innovation, how would that impact the market? And then they can sort of cherry pick what they put out there. So that'll be interesting, definitely to watch out for in the future. And I don't know, Liz, Nate, maybe now if you want to quickly finish us off with your pick.
Wow, my pick. I think that everything that is happening at all of these vendors is realigning work in a very interesting way, but the work vendors are also realigning themselves to potentially start coming in. I think that the next year is going to be a very interesting year for, well, all of us on this call, because everyone is selling a knowledge solution that have never sold knowledge solutions before. Everyone is selling a WEM solution that's never sold a WM solution before. So there is this kind of idea that, I don't know whether people think that somehow like the contact center has oodles and oodles of money and that we're just dying to buy all sorts of new toys. And so people should come and sell us a whole bunch of new stuff. I don't know who's spreading that rumor, but we should probably just help everybody out and just stop it. But it's really interesting because I think that everyone that had seen really healthy growth spurts, especially during the pandemic, especially around things like collaboration, work, everything, Zayas, you brought it up perfectly, kind of starting in that UCaaS motion, whether it was around communication or collaboration, whether it was around work, whether it was around workforce enablement, you've started to see folks in actual HCM be like, wait a minute, we actually know how to manage people and human capital far better than those kids in the contact center. Why don't we come up with a module? We're starting to see content management solutions say, wait a minute, we know the content that's actually at the cornerstone of knowledge much better than those people in the contact center do. We should have a knowledge. And now with AI, knowledge takes on a whole new meaning. So I think, the big story for me was hearing the words knowledge brought up so much in odd places like Adobe Max, hearing it brought up in, the AWS Generative AI Summit, where we're starting to talk about knowledge content in a way that those of us who know knowledge as a subset of the surface experience are going to start learning all new ways that people want to bring content into that exchange and how AI is going to change that. So I think there are going to be a bunch of big announcements that are coming up kind of between now and the start of the year. But hold on to your hats, everyone. It's going to get wild.
I think that's such a good point, Liz. I'm just going to jump in, Charlie, because when it comes to, you've either got fine tuning or RAG, well, when it comes to getting the best of your models, RAG is entirely dependent on your knowledge strategy. I mean, it's very simple. And so you're right. I totally agree. I just want to, when it comes to knowledge, it's going to be central to the whatever landscape you're in. And I wonder if this kind of convergence of WEM and those is going to create another opportunity for pure plays again. This sort of goes round and around, right? it starts to, as you converge these things start to get a little bit diluted, don't they? So then suddenly you get people going, well, actually, we're specialists in this. We can do this better than the diluted one.
Social media specialists come back.
Yeah. So it's round and round we go, right? Anyway, sorry. Jumping, John.
Excellent. No, all good. And it was great to hear kind of all of your top picks for stories as well. It helps me in the future as well when I'm picking out stories for this session. But I think it's a really great place to end today's chat. So thank you very much to all of our expert analysts for joining me. And thank you all for watching. Bye for now.